COVID-19 variant Omicron's attempt to take over the world is being helped by a surprise trait. Here's what's happening. Precise structural changes to the Omicron variant spike protein have been identified that mean it is capable of breakthrough infections that afflict both vaccinated people and those who have previously been infected, according to a new study in the journal Science, which looked at the variant's ability to both evade antibodies that protect against previous variants and still remain highly infectious. The infectiousness of the variant is in part determined by the 37 mutations in the amino acid sequences of its spike protein that distinguish it from the virus strain discovered in Wuhan. These mutations have been shown to help the variant evade antibodies generated by the 6 most commonly used vaccines and all but one of the monoclonal antibodies used to counter infections. As the mutations also affect the structure of the region of the spike protein responsible for attaching to and entering cells, a tradeoff had been expected where they might simultaneously restrict the variant's ability to bind to target cells. The new study used cryo-electron microscopic and X-ray crystallographic studies to get an extremely detailed view of the Omicron spike protein and reveal that the proposed tradeoff does not apply to it. The mutations do indeed change how the protein interacts with antibodies so that the ability of almost all monoclonal antibodies against it is reduced, but at the same time, the ability of the spike's receptor binding domain to bind to human cells at the ACE2 receptor is actually enhanced, so it is able to bind even more tightly. The Science study's lead author, cited by SciTech Daily, summed up the situation like so. "This virus has incredible plasticity," he said. "It can change a lot and still maintain all the functions it needs to infect and replicate." He added that it's almost guaranteed Omicron is not the last variant we're going to see. Coronavirus strains are still evolving. Here's where the virus is at now and what happens next. SARS-CoV-2 will continue to evolve in various directions beyond the mutations seen in its Delta variant, according to Hamish McCallum, director at the Center for Planetary Health and Food Security at Griffith University. Since the virus's emergence in 2019, the global population of SARS-CoV-2 has accumulated an average of about 1 mutation every 2 weeks, according to the Next Strain COVID tracker. Writing for The Conversation, McCallum explains that these mutations occur when the virus's genome, made up of around 30,000 nucleotides, is replicated and some of those nucleotides are erroneously replaced. Along the way, some of these mutations confer advantages on the virus, in particular, the ability to produce more cases more quickly, and these mutations are more likely to survive into the next generation because of natural selection. At the moment, the Delta variant offers a clear demonstration of this selective process in action. People infected with Delta carry 300 times more viral particles in their bodies than those with the original Wuhan strain of the virus when symptoms were first observed, according to a recent South Korean study cited by Reuters. On top of that, a smaller Chinese study, released as a preprint on July 23rd, found that while the original Wuhan strain was detectable in people's bodies 6 days after exposure, Delta was detectable after just 4, which means it is replicating faster. In combination, this ability to replicate faster and replicate more often means Delta has evolved to be 2 to 3 times more transmissible than the original Wuhan strain, according to one evolutionary biologist cited by NPR. In practice, that's likely to be happening because the increase in viral particles inside the body has been linked to both an increase in the virus's ability to transmit in the open air and in its ability to transmit through fleeting contact, according to McCallum. While faster replication times can make contact tracing efforts more difficult, according to an article in the journal Nature. However, the evolutionary principles behind Delta's evolution so far are consistent with evolutionary theory, according to McCallum, and those same principles can tell us about the directions in which useful mutations might take the virus next. For instance, a number of recent studies, including one by the researchers at the University of Oxford and the UK Office for National Statistics, have found that vaccines are already less effective at preventing Delta infections, and that where infections do occur, the high viral loads found were similar to those in unvaccinated people. With viral particles that evade vaccines carrying an evolutionary advantage, evolutionary theory tells us that we can expect an arms race between vaccine developers and the virus, according to McCallum. Vaccines will attempt to catch up with viral evolution, and, as a part of this, we're likely to need regular booster shots designed to overcome new variants, similar to flu booster shots. Alongside this, because the virus's increased ability to transmit relies partly on its ability to reproduce in large numbers inside a person, and that increase takes up more of a person's resources, it is also likely that anyone not vaccinated will be facing a virus that is more harmful to them because they will be facing viral loads much higher than they previously would have done. From there, propelled by the broad principles of evolutionary theory and acting through random mutation, the virus's ability to transmit will continue to increase, people will continue to become infectious sooner, and variants will continue to make vaccines less effective, at least until the virus reaches the point of peak fitness, where it runs out of advantageous mutations to develop. The virus cannot evolve indefinitely, according to an article published in the journal Nature Medicine, and eventually a virus will reach its form of maximum transmission, after which new variants will provide no further advantage in infectivity. However, this may not preclude more dramatic shifts in the virus over the longer term. The UK government's Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies says it is a realistic possibility that the virus could combine different strains, or combine with other viruses in humans, or combine with viruses in animals, and this could cause more transformative mutations. Depending on the type of virus it combined with, this kind of mutation would cause increases in mortality rates and necessitate more substantial changes to vaccines. The only more optimistic note in that report from the UK government's Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies is that it is a realistic possibility in the even longer term that the virus could become less virulent, like the common cold. In the conversation, McCallum explains that this makes sense in evolutionary terms because versions of the virus that make their host very sick are generally selected against. People who get very sick are more likely to die or be isolated, he says, which lowers the chance of the virus transmitting to others. All of these theories about where COVID-19's direction of travel remain relatively broad because there is a huge number of combinations of mutations that are possible, according to Stephen Goldstein, a virologist who studies the evolution of coronaviruses at the University of Utah, cited by Vox. There's so much complexity that is beyond our capacity to understand, he explains. However, two further predictions appear widely agreed upon. First, Kari Devink, a virologist who studies viral evolution at Bowie State University, explained to Fox that the virus isn't likely to drastically change how it transmits. At the moment, it's a respiratory virus, and it is likely to remain that way. If you consider a cold virus, you don't worry it's going to start to be sexually transmitted or anything, Devink says. Similarly, it likely won't become predominantly surface transmissible. Finally, it is certain that humans cannot catch up with the virus by evolving ourselves, according to McCallum in the conversation, because we do not evolve quickly enough. SARS-CoV-2 has experienced roughly the same amount of mutational evolutionary change during the pandemic proportional to its genome size as humans have since the Homo habilis first walked the Earth about 2.5 million years ago, according to Ed Feal, professor of microbial evolution at the Milner Center for Evolution, also writing for The Conversation.
For more news animations and explainers, hit the subscribe and bell button to join the Tomo News family. Thanks for watching.